This is what we do. 10 years of loitering all over Malaysia to find the best driving and riding roads in the country. In 10 years, we've documented over 100 routes in Peninsular Malaysia alone. Since 2022, we have been organising experienced drive events for some of these routes with our Route Hunters Malaysia members. And so far, we have done 57 such events. The team needed a break and we got that with our 58th event. With 7 bikes and a twin turbocharged SUV, we headed out to Cameron Highlands, only this time, we took the long way around. This video is a quick summary of our getaway adventure on 2 and 4 wheels over 38 hours. Here's what happened. Before knowing about the ride, here's a list of what we were riding during the trip. The bikes were the fully loaded Modenas Versys 650, the highly praised Royal Enfield Himalaya 450, the mad revving Modenas ZX25RR, Aveta's VTM 250M, Suzuki's talented V-Strom 250, Triumph's beautiful Speed 400, and finally our very own Royal Enfield Classic 350. Following the entire entourage of bikes is a fully loaded Volkswagen Touareg. The twin-turbo V6 SUV is essentially a debadged Porsche Cayenne, therefore sporting a significantly lesser price tag with still a significant amount of kit. Our ride took us from our Route Hunters garage in PJ to the border of Selangor and Pahang. We regrouped at our first stop, which was at the Genting Sepah Arenal. This arenal is a hotspot for various other groups who were on their way to their respective weekend rides. Route 68 is an all-access across the Titiwangsa mountain range for those who wanted to head over to the east before the Karak Highway was built. But the real ride will come once we reach to the other side of the mountain range. By this point, we had already crossed 95 kilometers from the Route Hunters garage. Everyone's pretty fresh from the ride. Only the Aveta had a little limitation because of the seat size. With the skies getting hotter and drier, we set out to start our first proper ride route. The road ahead of us cuts through the Felda heartlands. On this road, every bike brought a different experience to it. The Classic 350, V-Strom 250 and the Himalayan 450 were perfect to soak in the sights, while the Versys, Triumph, Aveta and the ZX25RR were carving the corners out of this road. The road then turned along what we call the Durian Highway on the foothills of Mount Benung. This road had a little bit more traffic but just as entertaining to ride on. This leg came to an end outside of Sungai Ruan at the 5 petrol station. Here's where we had to top up the fuel on some bikes, especially the Aveta since it had the smallest tank. After regrouping with each bike, getting hydrated and emptying the bladder, we were on our way to our lunch stop. We took the road towards Dong before joining back Route 8, cutting to Route C5 via the C158. The Touareg was surprisingly frugal out here, coasting along reasonably well. Our lunch stop was only 20 minutes away from Felda Sungai Koyan. Located right next to the main road along the Lipis River, this hideout was just what we needed to unwind after riding for almost 177 kilometers. The menu here is simple but the meals were hearty. They tasted good too, with good portions. The river at this point was relatively clear, and we even saw some families bathing in it, unlike how it is when it reaches Benter. On a hot and humid afternoon, it was the perfect place to stretch and cool off after sprinting through the back roads of Pahang using middleweight-ish bikes. Once jacked up on the calories, we swapped stories, finished the remainder of the photoshoot, and proceeded to our next stop. This is a must for any vehicles wanting to travel up to Cameron Highlands. The Patron and Petronas at Sungai Koyan is the last outpost before heading up to the Cameron Highlands at this part. Once we filled up the bikes, we were off. This route is one of the 4 routes that are available to access Cameron Highlands. The route is fondly known as the Sungai Koyan Access and is frequented by the people from Central and East Pahang. Since it's the latest among the 4 routes to be constructed to access Cameron Highlands, it is not as twisty as the other routes, providing a relatively easy ride with amazing views. Typical of mountain weather, the skies went from sunny to dreadful rain within minutes. Assuming that it's just a light drizzle and will soon pass over was a big mistake. The skies opened up full on and we pulled over to get into our rain gear. Well, some of us did. With the temperature getting colder by the kilometer thanks to the weather and the elevation change, we soldiered on over the mountain. Even long after the rain had stopped, we were soaked and the cool mountain air was not doing any favours. Yet the spectacular scenery and the awesome road kept us going. Eventually we came to our next stop point.
Thanks to the rain.
Finally, we got out of our soaked gear to stretch a bit after riding up from 100 meters above sea level to 600 meters. It may not even be as high as Gotong, but the weather, scenery and roads here were one of a kind. Let the visuals do the description of the vibe here. We were recollecting our experience with the rest of the crew when unexpectedly a solo rider dropped by to join us. The rider was on his way from Fraser's to Cameron's and was curious about the Aveta and asked about it. We offered him a test drive of it, and after finding out where we were headed, he joined us with his Husqvarna. The rest of the journey quickly raised the elevation by 1000 meters above sea level within 10 kilometers. But we barely felt it as we were too busy being entertained by the corners and the sun-kissed surroundings. With the evening sun setting, the whole valley turned to an almost orange view. As we cleared Ringlet and proceeded to Tanah Rata. Before long, we reached our overnight stop point, the Mountain View Bungalow. The hot shower and the warm clothes, thanks to it being safely stowed away in the 810 litres of boot space the Touareg has, and the cozy beds and blanket at our overnight accommodation was just what we needed after getting soaked coming up here. The whole place had plenty of parking on site for all the bikes and cars we brought up, and space to dry up our gear too. Perched on a small hill overlooking the convent church, the property was close to all the hotspots in Tanah Rata and you can walk to them, which is what we did when we decided to go for dinner. The rest of the night was spent in front of the campfire, swapping stories until each one of us turned in for the night.
That Van Damme movie. What was it? It's like
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport, yeah.
Bloodsport.
What's the character's name?
The morning was misty and cool under the Embun Jantan, and we reflected on the various vehicles that we brought up for this trip. Each bike brought a different flavour for this trip. Naturally, this trip belonged to the adventure bikes, with the Versy 650 being an absolute speed demon, with the most powerful engine and chassis tuned to high-speed cruising and cornering. Yet the driving position was easy with super comfy seats. Himalayan 450 was the second easiest bike to ride with probably the most perfect suspension setup for this trip, allowing even the least experienced rider to handle the entire journey with ease. There is vibration from the single at certain speeds, but you can brush it off as the character of the bike rather than an annoyance. Easiest by far to ride is the Suzuki V-Strom 250. With the lightest weight, easiest controls and a really rev-happy single. It could carve up the corners with confidence despite using those chunky tyres. Only above a certain speed do you feel the top-end deficit compared to the rest of the bikes. The Triumph was surprisingly potent. With the Diablo Rosso tyres on them, it could almost match the Versys speed over the entire journey, despite being a 400cc single, which is why the GoPro mounted on the Speed 400's rider could bring you all this lovely footage. The ZX25R was the only sports bike out here with us on this trip. Its rider, who's the owner, claimed it was just as comfortable as the other bikes, but it definitely had the best induction noise, revving as high as F1 cars. The classic 350 was the least powerful bike, but on these roads it's not easy to hit big speeds anyways, hence the performance gap was not too big. Surprisingly fun during the curves, it holds its own with a unique feel during the trip. The oddball choice here was the Avetta VTM 250. This bike was never designed for such a trip, yet here it is attracting the most amount of attention, offering by far the most amount of fun on the twisties. Its limitation, however, is not the 8-litre fuel tank, but its seat. The bigger surprise than the Avetta is the Touareg. Despite featuring a 340 horsepower, 450 Nm twin-turbo V6 with 3 litres of capacity, pushing a 2-ton SUV, there was still nearly half tank of petrol left. Even with the easy driving the Touareg team did, it's still an extremely impressive figure. Once the gears dried, we kicked off our second day of riding. After topping up all the bikes, especially the Avetta, with fuel at Brinchang, we decided to stop at Sungai Palas Tea Estate. We took the stairs up to the visitor centre, had some tea and snacks, and kicked off the ride back down. By the time we hit Kuala Lumpur, the skies once again opened up along the Tapah Road. This time we suited up just before the full showers. We carefully trekked down the mountain along with a couple of other biker groups. It would be just before sunset when we reached down at the base of the mountain and nightfall by the time we regrouped in Tapah. By this time it was a full-on thunderstorm coming down on us. We braced ourselves to brave the dark, wet roads ahead of us. The journey back was done via Route 1 as it was safer and easier to access a petrol station compared to the highway. Without the aid of any navigation devices, we were riding old school, reading the signboards to position ourselves from one checkpoint to the other. The hectic riding did not discourage us at all. In fact, it was mesmerizing. The added hazard elevated our sense of awareness and kept us focused on the riding only. By the time we reached the Route Hunters garage in PJ, it would be 11:20 at night. We started the ride on Saturday at 9 AM and finished at 11:30 PM the next day. In that 38 hours, we had crossed 540 kilometers of road over some of the most epic drive routes on the country across 3 states, rode to almost 1,500 meters above sea level, and sampled a whole lot of delicious food along the way. This is exactly what the Malaysian road trip should feel like. This experience is something unique to our country, with nowhere else offering such views and culture in the same mix. We got to experience all using 7 bikes and one really comfortable feature-loaded SUV. After the frankly back-breaking and hectic 2024, this is exactly what the Route Hunters team needed. We will be back for more. If you like our adventure, do support us by liking and sharing this video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We have more on the way.